Welcome, everyone. My name is Cristina Colom, and I am the Director of Digital Future Society. Digital Future Society is a global initiative from the Spanish Ministry of Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation and the Mobile World Capital Barcelona Foundation that aims to build a more sustainable, a more equitable, and a fair digital future for us all, who doesn't leave anyone behind. Thank you for joining us today. I do hope you find inspiring and enlightening the session that we will deliver as of now, presenting our latest report called Gender Practices in Digital Platforms, Beauty Workers and Their Customers in India. Allow me to start by thanking Casa Asia, the reference institution who links Spain and the Asian continent, sharing or linking on cultural aspects, on educational, on economical, and institutional aspects, and who has become a natural partner for this session. Let me also thank and recognize the excellent work of the International Institute of Information Technology of Bangalore, who has been a contributor, of course, with authors to this report, hand in hand with the think tank of Digital Future Society. And last but not least, let me also thank the outstanding diplomats who will be also sharing their views on the focus that we have put on this, in this case, in a particular country, which is India. Honorable Excellency, Mr. Sanjay Verma, and Honorable Excellency, Mr. Jose Maria Ridao. Without further delay, let me introduce you to Carlos Grau, CEO of Barcelona Mobile World Capital Foundation, who will deliver some introductory remarks. So, Carlos, welcome. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cristina. A real pleasure. Great day for all of us. For Mobile World Capital Barcelona, from the Future Society team, we have the aspiration to become a reference for the debate, so necessary at global level, on technological humanism, as well as for the implementation of solutions, recommendations, guidelines, and call to actions to face the global economic, social, and ethical challenge of emerging technologies, connectivity, and the future of work. This is an historical opportunity to contribute for the technological humanism, and in turn position the need to design and implement technology at the service of citizens at the center and general interest through the world. Digital Future Society has consolidated its purpose as a reference in research, platform analysis, and piloting, exploring new advanced solutions. For all the workforce and teams involved, I want to thank every institution, researcher, and citizen for their commitment and contribution to this initiative. As you may know, the project was initiated during a very difficult moment for the world, the pandemic. But we have leveraged the opportunity because technology and innovation are now critical and are at the center of our society. In the present moment, we are testimonies of a growing tendency that highlights a new relationship between workers and customers through digital platforms. India is a clear case to observe and is one of the largest and fastest growing technology markets around our world. We are facing an historical moment that opens a door for us to take advantage of all these opportunities generated by the digital age itself. This report is a necessary step to analyze a feminized sector, its impact in our society and economy. We are facing a growing tendency that could well be extrapolated to other countries in our planet. For that reason, it's a great honor for us to count with expert and the institutional representation of great prestige today. I'm humbled to greet the Honorable Excellency Mr. Verma, India Ambassador to Spain, and the Honorable Excellency Mr. Ridao, Spanish Ambassador for India, for their involvement and time dedicated today. It's a real pleasure for us to host such great speakers that can provide a relevant vision with a precise economic and social impact and grant us with their sincere point of view from two very complementary countries. As well, I would like to thank the wise reflections included in this report by a distinguished organization like the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, with whom the think tank of Digital Future Society has a close collaboration. Your true passion and expertise in economic globalization and social transformation provides to this report and presentation of Verity. I firmly believe that today, with such a relevant panel, we can highlight a topic as relevant as digital label platforms, especially feminized sectors, and deepen its effects in different perspectives. It's the right time for us to anticipate the social impact of new technologies and new business model. There is a new future of work where digital platforms play a significant role. Just in our country, Spain, we see these jobs growing exponentially and impacting today more than 13% of the workforce population. It's time to analyze the impact. It's time also to suggest new frameworks to protect these workers from the public entities and also from the private organizations. From Mobile World Capital Barcelona, from Digital Future Society, we hope to contribute to this emerging tendency that soon will become a global opportunity and at the same time a global challenge. A difficult context that, if properly guided, can have a positive economic, social impact in our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you very much. And now let's move on to hear some introductory works from Javier Parrondo, Director General of Casa Asia. Javier, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Good afternoon to our Indian friends. First of all, allow me to thank Digital Future Society and the Mobile World Capital for this invitation and for the opportunity to co-organize the presentation of this important report, Gender Practices on Digital Platforms, Beauty Workers and Their Customers in India. I hope that this event will enable us to collaborate in the future. This is, as I mentioned before, the meeting, the first step in a collaboration that we hope will start today, especially considering that in many Asian countries, digital transformation is driving economic growth and social change faster than in the rest of the world. I would also like to take this opportunity to greet our ambassador to India, Jose Maria Rigau, newly appointed, and the ambassador of India to Spain, Sanjay Verma. Casa Asia, very quickly, is a consortium created in 2001 between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the government of Catalonia, Generalitat de Catalunya, and two city councils, Madrid and Barcelona. And it is the main window open to Asia, a bridge between our country and the Asia-Pacific region, one of the most dynamic in the 21st century. India has always been present in our program and has a good example of this. Even during the pandemic, we organized a series of online lectures with distinguished analysts who help us understand the relations between both countries and the transformation of India in this century. Casa Asia also organized the visit of His Excellency Ambassador Verma to Barcelona. He had the opportunity to meet the city council, but also to have important working sessions with actors such as Port of Barcelona, La Fira, Chamber of Commerce, etc., and with businessmen and businesswomen with interest in India. The report we are presenting today is of great interest because it focuses on two very important aspects of our economy. The first is the emergence of the digital labor platforms, the app economy, and the changes that it implies in business models and in the way customers and suppliers interact. And the second, has equally important, what is the impact of technology and digitalization on gender issues? Gender is at the center of economic prosperity, and many studies confirm that without gender balance, economic development will not be able to reach all its potential. From this point of view, the greater flexibility of schedules and workplace brought by digitalization can be an element that favors the integration of women in labor market. And my final point, the conclusions of these reports is of extreme importance for us because it can also be applied to Spain. In many aspects, workers in the beauty sector felt more valued when visiting customers at home, and so their working conditions improved. This is, as I just said, a useful information for Spain. So, in conclusion, I hope this report will be of interest for everyone and that we can learn from it to improve women's labor conditions and continue. This is something that we would like to carry out in the future, to continue the task identified in the paragraph called What is Next? These are important areas that we would like to address in the future. So thank you very much, and greetings from Madrid.
Thank you very much, Javier, and thank you. Definitely, this is hopefully the initial step for collaboration as well with Casa Asia. Let's wait before we get to the page of next steps. Before that, let me quickly begin with the first part of the session, where we will be setting the scene in order to present the case of India. Why have we focused on India? The pandemic has accelerated a technological revolution whose vehicle is digital information and communication technologies. Digitalization of our global economy today is spreading much faster than we estimated and is already affecting all areas of our life. The new professional profiles have not only adapted to the condition of working from home, but are also increasingly moving away from the traditional figure of a professional with a permanent or a semi or part-time contract or just a project. Working through digital platforms is already a reality in constant growth that has come to revolutionize the labor market with the need for a greater degree of flexibility. Yet, although knowledge and analysis on the platform economy is increasing, literature on sectors with a predominantly female workforce remains limited. This is why it is important, the presentation of this report that includes the experiences of both female workers and platform users. Setting the scene, as I was saying before, is why we are focusing on India. And I'm honored to have with me Honorable Excellency Mr. Sanjay Verma and Honorable Excellency Mr. Jose Maria Ridao. Thank you very much for joining us today in this conversation. I would like to address my first question to Honorable Excellency Mr. Sanjay Verma, Ambassador of India in Spain. The digital economy is the economic activity that results from billions of everyday online connections among people, businesses, devices, data, and processes. The digital economy is taking shape and undermining conventional notions about how businesses are structured, firms interact, and how consumers obtain services, information, and goods. Ambassador, could you please illustrate us why India is relevant for the global digital economy? What is the role India is set to play in the transformation journey towards this global digital economy? Ambassador?
Well, thank you, Ola. Namaste. Before I address the question, I acknowledge with grateful thanks this opportunity to share my views on this occasion. I greet Ambassador Redao Mr. Grau, my friend Javier Perondo, Christina, of course, and Professor Partha Sarthi and Dr. Mutiar for this wonderful subject, which is the centerpiece of our conversation today. Uh, Let me not focus on just the economy aspect. Why is India important to the global digital reality? I would suggest that. One is that the digital space is going to dominate all aspects of our life from this point onwards. Uh, if you look at governance, an issue a country of the size of India or any developing country would have had is how do you reach services or how do you reach political rights or economic opportunities to the last citizen of your country. I remember when I just joined the foreign service 3 decades ago in our training academy in Missouri. One of our most incisive instructors suggested that governance in India should not be called democracy; it should be called jeepocracy. Jeep being the SUV, the generic name of the vehicle, which was used by the government officers at that point. So, what he was suggesting was uh, the governance or the state reached as far as the Jeep, the vehicle could reach in the rural areas of India. So this was the challenge of infrastructure. How do you reach people? Now the digital age is making it possible to jump that hurdle. So India's experience on how it delivers services, privileges, rights to its people becomes an example for the rest of the world. So that is the governance aspect. The economy aspect, I think it's more of a given because if you look at India's history, 200, or let's say in the 18th century, India was bringing in a quarter of the global GDP. We had a significant decline since then, and but now we are in an area or in an era where we are fast approaching reclaiming our a place in the global economic setup. Our share to the global GDP is increasing. It's not just based on the size of our population, which is one-sixth of the global population, but also the fact that we are a young country. The demographics suggest that about our average age is less than 30. So if we have the youngest people in the world or in the planet in India, then somewhere we become the digital poster child for the global digital future and not just the economic future. We currently have about 750 million internet users that will touch 900 million plus in the next 3 to 4 years. We consume more mobile data than North America and Western Europe combined. We have the world's third biggest startup ecosystem. We have 66 unicorn startups. And the best part is that 30 or half of these, or about half of these, have emerged in 2021 itself, that is in the last 9, 10 months. Uh, India was known for its software services, for our brilliant individuals, resource persons, but increasingly we are also now beginning to make a presence felt in software products, and that is, I think, where the future is going to lie. Now, to give you an example of how the Indian digital space is playing out, let me draw attention to the Indian company Reliance Jio, the 4G network. It's a digital service platform which has attracted investments and interest from Facebook, Google, and leading investment firms around the world. And this company, like two other Indian companies, Bharti Airtel and Vodafone to some extent, are testing made in India 5G propositions. So this is to suggest where even 5G can be a native technology. Uh, so this startup in India goes a little beyond that. Now let's talk of the governance aspect. Where does the government of India make it easier for startups? There is this concept, a trinity called JAM Trinity, JAM. The J stands for Jandhan, which is basic banking accounts. A stands for the Aadhaar unique identification card, and M stands for the mobile based services. So this jam trinity introduced by the government of India rests on a very robust communication network. To give an example, in the rural areas, we have what is called BharatNet, which is the world's largest rural broadband project, which aims to provide minimum 100 Mbps optical fiber connectivity to about 250,000 village bodies or rural bodies all across the country. We've already achieved 70% of that target. Digital payments, for example, just going back 4 years ago, in the entire year of 2017, we only had 430 million transactions through for digital payments. But last month, that is in September 2021 alone, in 1 month, we had 3.65 billion transactions. So from 430 million over 1 year, we have now jumped to 3.65 billion in a month. The government keeps periodically launching schemes which are embedded with digital technology. For example, just last week, at the end of September, my Prime Minister launched what is called the Digital Health ID, where every Indian would have a cloud-based health profile, all records, tests, references will be available digitally. So I think we are probably one of the first countries to be doing that. So this is where it stands. This is India's scale, India's innovativeness, or the way we look at how digital technologies will come into play into all aspects of governance and our economy. To conclude, let me suggest that in India, policy by the government of India, capital, which is coming in from overseas, but is also being generated within the country, and human resources. These three factors have come together for what appears to be a very bright digital future. We are committed to open standards, sharing our knowledge, especially with the global south. In 2023, we will be chairing the G20, and we hope to take G20 to a new digital future by focusing on protection of private data from foreign entities, and also trying to address the digital divide. And this is, of course, the subject of the paper, which will be discussed subsequently. And the paper is, of course, it sort of throws light from the perspective of gender, but in many ways it is also about the future of work. And the issue of gender is very significant because we always tend to forget that the female gender is 50% of the planet. And if we do not take along 50% of the human beings together, then I don't think any progress or development is worth its name. In the analog world, there has been a lag. Women rights, women empowerment has lagged behind. But I think the digital age, we can correct that. There are, of course, conflicting signals. The period of COVID-19 does suggest a certain stress to the opportunities available to women workers or women employees, and they appear to have suffered. That is what some reports suggest. Also, the access to digital equipment, phones, falls behind when it comes to women. That needs to be tackled. The rural-urban digital divide or intra-family digital divide, these are all issues which will have to be dealt with, and I believe the study is very timely. And the takeaways from the study would have repercussions not just for beauty or wellness sector, but across the board. And I'm sure my colleagues in the government would be very interested in seeing what the conclusions and the prescriptions studies like this offer. So let me thank the organizers. This is a great initiative, and I thank Casa Asia, Mobile World Capital, my colleague Ambassador Rao for being part of this, and of course the two professors for making this occasion possible. Thank you.
So much, Ambassador. Thank you so much. It is definitely true that we cannot just talk about economy or digital economy. It resonates with us that it impacts all areas of our lives and definitely the social part. And this gives me the chance to now introduce Ambassador Jose Maria Ridao in the sense that it is a fact that digital labor platforms are really transforming, as we were saying, the labor markets and shaping probably some of the trends on the economic sphere, and being India probably a case of study. But it is also true that those same digital labor platforms are somehow becoming instrumental for fostering social integration. Ambassador Ridao, could you please further elaborate this point, as I think it is crucial to also understand the penetration of digital platforms in a market like India? Ambassador?
Thank you very much, Christine. First of all, I would like to greet my colleague, Ambassador Verma. It's a great pleasure for me to share this space with him. I feel myself very lucky when I meet him, and I had the opportunity to work with him to strengthen relations between India and Spain, and to learn in India some lessons we can apply in Spain. After this, I would like to congratulate the authors of the report. It's a very interesting one. It's a very point report. And I would like also to thank you, the organizers and our host, Casa Asia, for giving me the opportunity to share my views on this point with all of you. So thank you finally, Christina, for your question, because it's a very important one in the sense that it allows me and it allows us to reflect one step before speaking about technology. So sometimes we don't feel that technology is a tool, it's a powerful tool. And in the case of digital world, it's a very, very powerful tool. And it's important to remember this, to say that digital, as other technologies, are tools, because we have to choose how to employ, for what employ these tools. So we are speaking many times about the digital gap, the differences in social, geographical, and other aspects created by the new technologies. But I think the pandemic and other situation, international situation, has permitted us to reflect on how this technology, this precise technology, new technologies, how digital can be used also to dominate the gap, social, geographical, and others. So how this technology can help us in order to integrate more our societies in terms of social differences or geographical or other differences. So when we speak about this from this point of view, we see that we are talking about our recent experience. When you speak about technological humanism, I think, or I permit myself to think that you are speaking about this precise aspect. So we are deciding the ends to which apply this means, which is technology, which is digital. So we are speaking about the recent past because we have the pandemic, and the pandemic, India and Spain shared a very difficult decision, which is the lockdown. And in the lockdown, we can realize that people don't go in the streets, but life continues. So it's very important to think about this, because this is possible because of technology, precisely by digital technology. So people were in their homes, but at the same time, collective and social life continued. So it's very important to show that we have decided in this case that we will employ this technology in order to dominate this special gap as a product of the pandemic. So we see that our schools and university continued. It's very important. Perhaps our pupils and students miss to meet to each other. But in any case, knowledge, again, is the most important thing in this period of the life of everyone. Assure for the technology, for the digital. So this is a very important point. If you permit me, and thinking about an area I know quite well, and it's important for us, which are the media, it's almost unbelievable that newspapers, radios, televisions could continue informing us about the situation, having the journalists at home, not in the newsrooms, is very important. And I underline this idea because if the mass media didn't make their work and their job in this moment, we have been, I presume, slaves of the rumors and the fake news. So it was very important that mass media, preferential mass media, keep working, and this is due to new technologies and due to digital. We have also the experience of essential works, we call in Spain. So works in which you need to have people working presentially, but in fact, new technologies and digitalization permit these people to continue working. It was not by other means, it was all prepared by digital means in order to permit people to be present in the jobs which needed to the present for a human being doing things. So it's very important. And finally, also, we have to treat all the data, and we have to understand and to take decisions from the data. So the elaboration of this data was also possible because of this technology, because of digital. So this is the past, this is the experience. We have been so quick in applying digital to this need because we had the tool and we decided the objective to employ this tool. But we have to think about the future also. And thinking about the future, the relationship between Spain and India are clearer, if you permit me. So Ambassador Verma spoke about the rural areas, the integration through digital of rural areas. We in Spain have the same problem of the same situation. Perhaps it's a chance for people living in these areas to have the digital in order to do their works. But in any case, we have to establish this aim for this tool, for digital. We have to think in the future also about how to dominate the gap, social gap, because we know, and in universities and schools realize this, that people with lower incomes had difficulties to continue learning and to continue acquiring knowledge. So it's very important to work in this area to integrate socially these people. And finally, we have the possibility also to integrate people through digital and especially about gender. So, which is the main theme of this meeting. So we have the past, we have the future, and let me conclude by saying that the most important thing and the most important lesson of the pandemic is that we finally, in my personal feeling, realize that we have a tool, and technological humanism obliges us to decide the objectives to which we apply this tool. So I am glad this meeting will answer this question among others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And yes, technological humanism puts technology at the service of us, citizens. This is the approach I think both of the ambassadors were sharing with us. I would further on with both of you, but unfortunately we are just running out of time and we would like now to start the second part of the session. So let me thank once again both ambassadors for sharing their views and their positions that I think it has been extremely enlightening for this session. And with us, I have the honor now to present Olivia Blanchard. She's one of the researchers at the think tank for Digital Future Society, and actually she's one of the authors for this interesting report that we are just presenting today. So Olivia, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. So the report that we're presenting today, as we've heard, is the result of a joint effort between our team at Digital Future Society think tank and the team at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to two of the people that I've been working with very closely over the last year and a half, Balaji Parthasarathy and Preeti Mudliar. Hi, Balaji.
Hi, Olivia. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. And hello, Preeti.
Yeah.
Hello, Olivia.
So Balaji is professor at the Institute and co-founder of the Center for Information Technology and Public Policy. And Preeti is assistant professor at the Institute. And the Institute is one of the 22 member organizations of the Digital Future Society think tank's Future Open Council. And we've been working together for the last 2 or 3 years. So before we get into a conversation with both Preeti and Balaji about some of the key insights that have emerged out of the report, let me just tell you a little bit about why we chose this topic and how we've done it and what we've done. So as we've heard from the ambassadors, India plays a key role in the global economy. It has one of the largest and one of the youngest working populations. It's one of the most advanced digital economies and one of the fastest growing. And it also has a fast growing beauty and wellness sector. So for us in the think tank, it's really important to take a look at what's happening beyond our own borders, because the developments and the trends that are happening elsewhere today could happen here in 5 to 10 years' time. Another reason why we chose this topic is that in a lot of the literature on the platform economy, it's focused on the global north, so North America, Europe. And a lot of it is focused on sectors with a predominantly male workforce. So for us in the think tank, it's really important to also take a look at what's happening in other sectors, for example, home care, or in this case, the beauty sector, both of which have a highly feminized workforce. And finally, another final reason for choosing this topic is that the research gave us the opportunity to speak to customers and to also understand their motivations for joining the platform economy and switching from offline salons to an online app-based service, as well as understanding their experiences. So what have we done? The report is based on 45 interviews with workers and 30 interviews with customers. And both workers and customers were in 2 different locations, in Bangalore and in Delhi and surrounding areas, also known as the National Capital Region. And they use and work for 2 different platforms, Urban Company and Yes Madam. These platforms follow an on-demand model. The workers are freelance or independent contractors, and the platform takes a commission. So in our interviews, we were interested in exploring a range of themes. For example, what motivated workers to join these platforms? What was their previous experience in the industry? How many years had they been working in the sector beforehand? What are their working conditions like? What's the day-to-day like? What's the experience using the app? How do they feel about the use of reviews and ratings on behalf of customers? And as mentioned, this research started at the start of the pandemic. So we also included some questions about how COVID-19 affected their work experience. In regards to customers, we were also interested in finding out about their experience and their motivation for switching to an online service. We were interested in hearing about their experience vis-a-vis the platform and vis-a-vis the workers, their perception of professionalism and the professionality of the workers, as well as how the COVID-19 pandemic impacted their experience. So now we'll turn to hearing from Balaji and Priti about some of the key insights. It would be impossible for us to go through the whole report, so we're going to focus on the most interesting and pertinent issues. Just to remind you, if you have any questions for either Balaji or Priti, please put them in the chat and we'll try to address them at the end of the session. So if I could turn to Balaji and Priti, the first thing we'll talk about, and I'd like to hear from Balaji, is who are the workers? Who are the customers? If you could give us some insights into that, please, Balaji. I think so. Balaji, do we have a... Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Microphone, yeah. Thank you, Olivia. Like you mentioned, we have 45 workers and 30 customers across 2 cities, Bangalore and the capital region.
Balaji, if you'd like to share your screen so we can see your presentation, please.
Yeah, it is being shared.
We can't see it at the moment.
Can you?
Not yet.
Oh my goodness. Oops. Is it visible now?
Not at the moment.
Oops. Sorry about this.
So while we wait for the technical issues to be resolved, what we did was one of the first things that we wanted to find out is who are the workers and who are the customers. So data, for example, around their age, how long they've been working in the industry, how long they've been working on platforms, whether they were from the city or from elsewhere in India. And in regards to customers, we also wanted to know what their annual income was, how old they are, what their level of education is, and other data. So hopefully we'll get that on screen soon.
Okay. Is that any better?
If you can do full screen, I'm being told.
Is it visible now?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, thank you so much, and my apologies for these problems.
No problem.
Okay, so out of the 45 workers, we see a relatively even distribution in terms of age, starting from people who might say early in their career, and then many of them continue with beauty work much into their later life, going into about 36, 40. But the vast majority of workers are not terribly well educated. They mostly finished up to 10th grade. Just a few of them who've finished 12th grade, and very few of them with college education. Okay, the numbers are there on the screen. And if you look at their years of experience in the industry, the vast majority of them have put in somewhere between 6 to 15 years. So in a sense, you can call them veterans who actually moved into the online industry. This does raise questions about where they were before, and that's something we'll turn to soon. Now, if you look at the customers on the other hand, many of them are a lot younger. They're all maybe the age group of about 21 to 30. Many tend to be, working professionals who are seeking these services online. And why they moved online is again another issue that we will be getting to shortly. And I think here is something that's worth noting. All the customers, unlike the workers, are relatively very well educated. 19 out of 30 customers have a postgraduate degree, and 11 of them have an undergraduate degree. So all of them have finished college. And the other thing that I think is also important to note is that by virtue of the education that the customers have, their income levels tend to be relatively high. 25 of the 30 customers had income exceeding 1 million rupees a year. And it's just 5 of them who had an income less than that. Now, if you compare that with the workers, the average worker makes about 300 to 350,000 rupees every year. So there's a fairly vast disparity, both in terms of education and in terms of income. And this in turn creates certain asymmetries at the workplace, which we'll explain as we go along. That's the description, Olivia.
Very much, Balaji. Can I continue with you and ask you if you can tell us a little bit about the motivations? What made workers switch from working for a salon to joining an app and working through the app?
Yeah, so I think we could divide this into a set of macro factors and a set of micro factors. Okay. In terms of the macro factors, I think what's most important to understand in India is that something like 85 to 90% of the workforce in the Indian economy is in what's called the informal or the unorganized sector. That is, they're taking up work which comes with little or no benefits. Okay, so people are trying to sort of maximize their income in any way they can. And like the data on the workers pointed out, many of them are not very well educated in terms of not having a college degree, and they're trying to get into sectors where there's relatively low barriers to education. Right. The second macro circumstance force is the increased availability, and I think this Mr. Verma, the Indian ambassador, mentioned, is the increased availability of digital technology. We have about 500 million mobile phone users with broadband connections. So, when you're working for an online platform, it's important that you get the request or the requirement of a customer in a different location, and you're able to go there and provide a service to them. The third, I think, is also useful to remember is that India is the largest two-wheeler market in the world. So a lot of these ladies who are providing these services are going around the city from one location to another on their two-wheelers, carrying their kits. It's very important that they're able to do that, or they get somebody else to drop them, because carrying some of these things on public transport can be quite hard. And I think last but not least, I think, is the fact that we have a rather ambiguous legal environment that's behind this, the rise of the platform economy, because most of these workers, or all these workers, are considered independent contractors. So what has happened is there is this gray area where they're seen to be independent contractors who can deliver services. They're not given the employment rights, although the companies themselves are pretty much in the formal sector. The last mile fulfillment is by these so-called independent contractors. It remains a gray zone. It's very contentious right now. But that in turn has certainly facilitated the rise of the of platforms. And specifically, what really pushed a lot of these women into this economy from offline into online was the sort of the demonetization that took place in 2016, which suddenly left them without immediate cash to spend, right? And getting onto these platforms, at least got money into their bank accounts and so on. So that, I think, played a very crucial role. At a micro level, these are the sort of the broad macro factors that apply, and applies to a lot of platform workers across other sectors. Since we're talking about women, many of them have sort of come, gone through a lot of personal difficulties in terms of, family issues and so on. They've had to take on the role of the breadwinner in the family because of either the marriages have gone bad, because they've got children to take care of, and so on. And talking of children, yes, there is the advantage of saying, okay, I can work on or take up work that is relatively flexible. I can do it at my own time. And for a number of these women, what also attracted them was the fact that even at times when demand goes up and down, here's a relatively stable income. I know I can put in a certain number of hours, and I can expect, right, even if there's no guarantee, that I can expect a certain level of income that I can maintain. So, in our study, we see roughly about 30,000 rupees is what they figured they could get. And finally, I think the other thing is, for many of these women, they had been trained in offline salons and so on. They sort of pick up the training along the way, even though they're not highly educated, and then they have managed to get onto these platforms. So these are some of the factors that have got them onto these platforms.
Thank you, Balaji. And Priti, what can you tell us about the customers who are also female in our study? What made them seek these services through the app? as opposed to going to an offline salon?
Right. So in our study, we found out that seeking beauty services offline in salons can surprisingly be a very complicated endeavor. And there is a lot of time and effort that goes into this particular project. So the foremost motivation that we found for women to seek beauty services online was the reduction of time and effort. With offline beauty services, walk-in appointments are not always possible, and matching availability may become a challenge. There is also the time spent in commuting, and traffic can often be a deterrent in cities like Bangalore and Delhi. So women seek ways to minimize the effort and the time that is spending in lining up all of these dependencies just so that they can get themselves groomed and just so that they can relax if there are spa services that they're seeking. Receiving beauty services at home allowed customers greater control over their time in more ways than one. So other than minimizing commuting, it also allowed women to receive uninterrupted attention to their own needs, rather than have the service workers' attention divided between other customers at the salon. So it typically took them lesser time that they spent in completing the job. And women also mentioned that they felt safer receiving services like massages in the safety and comfort of their own homes, because some places that offer spa services often make news as fronts for disreputable activities like prostitution, and there are often police raids at these establishments. One other point that participants in our study mentioned was that they often experienced body shaming in salons and very aggressive marketing by workers there, because they had to meet sales target for products and services that the salon was offering. So they were under pressure from the proprietor of the salon to push as many products and services that they could. And they would do this by telling customers that, the skin's really bad or they need to lose weight and therefore they should be opting for a variety of services. This was notably absent when they availed beauty services online. And then with the pandemic, safety, of course, was a very big concern, and receiving services at home allowed customers, again, greater control over hygiene and cleanliness. They could also control the atmosphere in their homes, such as, making their own playlists and setting their own mood so that they could have a more relaxed atmosphere. And during the time the study was conducted, participants also told us that as compared to offline salons, online services were cheaper. And with the advent of the pandemic, platforms also have started levying extra fees, which they term as hygiene fees. And that takes care of a lot of, protective gear that their workers wear, and the equipment that they would need to sanitize the space before they even begin the jobs. So with the levying of these extra fees, the prices may have gone up, and therefore it would be interesting to see whether online services continue to be cheaper and whether price does continue to act as a motivation for customers in opting for services online.
Thank you, Priti.
And yes, and but also, this does not mean that the switch to online platforms was absolute, and customers still chose to visit offline salons for various reasons. And for instance, hair services and also threading services was something that women were very reluctant to try offline, because they had their own preferred service providers whom they trusted. And some customers also told us that they would travel great distances just to go to the preferred hairstylist. And also threading services are generally priced very low, and platforms enforce a minimum spending value before you can order a service. And customers don't find it economical to order a range of service only if they have to get their eyebrows threaded. So for these two reasons, they still persist in looking for services offline in some instances, and in other instances, they are happy to avail of the online services.
So that's a very interesting point on what services are platformizable, if I may say that word, and which aren't, and people continue to prefer traveling for a distance to get that offline service. That's a whole issue for another debate. We'll move on now to another topic that's come up in our research, and that's related to the employment relationship between workers and platforms and the working conditions. So we've mentioned earlier the workers are working as independent contractors, but we found that the platforms exert certain degree of control over the day-to-day activities. Can you tell us a little bit more about this, Balaji?
Yeah. The interesting thing about, I mean, I'd like to say this first. The interesting thing about the exercise of control by platform on workers is also that it gives workers some sense of security. There's a sort of a funny irony here, and let me illustrate that with a couple of examples. To start with, when you are going to a customer's place, I mean, people are going around with a uniform. They're expected to be punctual, right? In a sense, these represent efforts by the platform to exercise a certain amount of control over the worker, right? But to the worker also, this gives a certain sense of professional identity. I have a T-shirt or a shirt that tells the world that I'm a beauty worker employed with this or that platform. Right? It gives me a sense of identity, and also I take pride in actually showing up at my customer's doorstep at the promised time, right? Then there's the other set of issues, like, on one hand, platforms expect, especially in beauty work, that their workers buy all the necessary inputs, right, for the kit directly from the platform. Now, on one hand, it's actually a fair bit of, it's a fairly profitable business for the platforms. They make fairly, sweet margins on selling these products. However, the workers still go with it for a couple of reasons, and the customers also for a couple of reasons. One is the platform tells the workers, if you use our products, if there's any adverse outcome, we will protect you from the liability, right? Because you're using our products, even though it might be a lot more expensive. Now, for the customers, there is also the sense of guarantee that, look, if the person comes from a platform which is recognized and they're known to use well-known products, I don't think I'll get sort of ripped off by some, unknown product. It's not going to affect my skin or any part of the body on which the service is actually carried out, right? So again, so the platforms, platforms are exercising control in a way over the worker by telling them you have to buy your inputs only from us. They conduct fairly regular audits, and they keep a track on saying, oh, you've done so many, you attended to so many customers. How come you aren't buying any more products from us? It doesn't sort of add up. So they do exercise that form of control, but at the same time, it works to the advantage of both workers and the customers. So they acknowledge it. So it's a what do you call? There's no sort of the distinction of what you might call control and what is it that customers and workers are willing to go along with is not absolutely clear. Then there's the other thing about workers getting onto the app. They are given clear-cut sort of rates for different services, like Preeti was mentioning, right? There's a minimum service charge, different services come at different rates. Now, the advantage that these women have is that I think they've told us that, no, at least you don't have to keep bargaining, right? Every time you go, is it 100 rupees or 200 rupees? There's a set rate. You don't waste time or negotiating over the rates. And so that's the thing. But I think overall, I think there's another overarching reason is that if women go to a customer's house and, there is always the danger of harassment, right? Because you might have, for example, a male pretending to be a woman calling for a service, and that might result in unwanted outcomes. I think the women very clearly feel that if they go there, representing one of these platforms as a service provider, there's a far greater sense that they'll be backed up because some of them do have, helplines that they can call. And even if they, while they are not encouraged, or actually they're strongly discouraged from rejecting a service, if they provide this reason as, a potential harassment, then I think they're taken care of. So for all these reasons, you see the platforms exercising control over whether it's rates, the use of, the inputs in the kit, how you show up, your turnout, and your ability to accept or reject clients. But at the same time, what we call control is also comes with a sort of a silver lining, if you might, which I think the workers are also willing to play along with. So that distinction is it's a bit of a gray area, and we wanted to sort of really emphasize that.
Balaji. So, in line with this, throughout the last few months, we've often discussed how it's important to place the study of the platform economy in the wider context of the the wider sector. So, what is happening in the offline sector? Priti, can you give us some insights into how the working conditions and the experiences of the platform workers compares to their experience, their previous experience in the offline sector?
Yes, so this was very interesting, speaking to the workers and asking how did it differ. And workers told us that they find greater control over their time when working on online platforms, in addition, of course, to increased earnings. So in their experiences, their offline beauty service work, they were often expected to remain in the salon for the entire workday. And this happens even if they are idle, there are no customers to attend to, they cannot pack up and leave. They are expected to remain for the entire workday. And working hours are also longer in the offline sector, but they are unable to direct their idle time in more productive ways. With platform work, what we learned is that workers could choose which time slot they were available for receiving orders because they have to mark their availability on the app. So the app will essentially require them to divide their workday into different time segments and let the app know for which time slots they are available so any orders can be directed towards them. And doing this allowed them greater control over how they wanted to use the time. A lot of workers told us that sometimes they just want to rest, right? And sometimes there are household chores to complete. Sometimes there are children to look after, helping them with their studies. So therefore, doing this allowed them to exercise their agency in how they would really like to spend the time. However, workers did tell us that they were discouraged from taking leave over the weekends unless there was an unavoidable emergency, because this is peak demand time for online beauty work. Women tend to request beauty services over the weekend because that's when most working women have the time. But beyond that, workers told us that the flexibility aspect of working as a beauty worker on these platforms, being able to arrange their schedule, making time for rest, because beauty work is quite physically demanding, and also being able to direct attention and be mindful of housework and other responsibilities that they have was the biggest way in which working for a platform was different from working for a salon. And some of the other aspects Balaji has already mentioned, having to wear uniforms and carrying branded kits which bear the company's name, was also something that they felt invited curiosity from other women, because they wanted to know how can we also become a part of this platform. For companies, for platforms such as Urban Company, they're also a very visible part of the urban landscape because they're quite aggressive in their marketing and advertising efforts. So you see the hoardings all over metro cities like Bangalore and Delhi. So there was a sense of larger belonging also that the beauty workers felt. They felt that they were, in a sense, as Balaji mentioned, protected by the company's reputation and the name, and that also added to their sense of being a part of a larger purpose. They felt that if they had to work as freelancers independently without affiliating themselves to a platform, they would be vulnerable to a lot of bargaining by customers, which is something that they could simply avoid, because all they had to do was say, well, this is the price set by the company and that is what I need to get paid. So they could avoid all of these issues. And these were some of the themes that emerged from our interviews with workers when we asked them, how did working for the platform differ from their offline working conditions?
Thank you, Priti. So before we go to the question and answer session, or part of the session, I'd just like to touch on another issue that's become a source of debate, sometimes controversy, and that's the use of ratings and reviews by customers of workers. So Priti, can you tell us a little bit about what we found in the interviews in regards to this, how the workers and the customers experience this feature of the platform?
Right. So reviews are a very important part of the platform economy, and online beauty service experience is no different. So when we spoke to the customers, they told us that they do read the reviews that workers have received when deciding whom they would like to pick. they also told us that they are more mindful about ensuring specific workers to provide them services depending on the kind of grooming service they're ordering. So for grooming services such as facial or a massage, getting the preferred worker is more important than others such as waxing, because that is just regular grooming work. And all customers were mindful that ratings affected worker livelihood. So nobody was ignorant that a bad rating will not influence the worker's livelihood in any way. They said they wouldn't rate someone poorly unless they found the worker unresponsive to feedback that they were giving during the service, such as causing them unnecessary pain while waxing or threading, or not cleaning up properly after the job is complete. Now, workers, on the other hand, had a lot at stake when it came to ratings. And we learned again from customers that workers would remind them to give them good ratings while they were leaving their homes. Some workers were more aggressive in making these requests, and customers, described encounters with workers who would not leave their house until they were satisfied and ensured that they had received a 5-star rating from the customer. And workers, when we spoke to workers about reviews, they told us that it was very hurtful for them when they received a bad rating. And while they had no way of knowing who left them a bad review, they told us that it was not difficult to guess the identity of the customer based on some of the things that they were describing. And they felt very bitterly towards them because they felt, I have spent so much time at this person's house, done my best, but I have still ended with a bad review. And on one particular platform, I think it was an Urban Company, the platform allowed the workers to rate the customers. But when we asked customers about this, they not all of them were aware that the beauty workers could rate them in return. Although they were aware of being rated by cab drivers on ride-hailing platforms such as Ola and Uber, which are the two platforms that are functional in India, but they didn't know the same kind of worker rating the customer was also possible on beauty service platforms. And but all customers told us that they felt it was a fair practice, and they guessed that workers would be rating them on how welcome they made the workers feel in their homes, and if they were courteous and polite while interacting with them. So very interesting perceptions on the reviews.
Okay, very interesting indeed. And I wish we had more time to go into a bit more depth in some of these issues, but we have to move on now. And there's some questions from our audience. So one of the questions is, you've been talking about the beauty sector. How have other more mature sectors like ride-hailing and sharing affected this sector? What can we learn from these sectors that may apply to the beauty sector too? So Balaji, would you like to give us some insights into this question?
Yeah, I think what I would like to do is to first distinguish the beauty sector from some of the other sectors like ride-hailing and food delivery, which you rightly mentioned are the most widely studied. They're much, much larger, right? I mean, Urban Company, the beauty services, they have no more than 10,000 workers, whereas in ride-hailing and food delivery, in ride-hailing, you're talking about more than 2.5 million across the country, at least. And in food delivery, you're talking about 500,000 across the country. I think the key difference between them and this is that, first of all, there's this whole gender difference because most of them, or almost all of them, are male. The second thing is that the kind of skills that you find that you need for a beauty worker are quite different. You find far more people with a driving license. That's mostly all that is required if you want to do food delivery or to become a cab driver. Of course, there's also the capital investment involved in getting yourself a cab or a motorbike. But assuming you have that, what happens is that the supply that you have in the marketplace of cab drivers or motorcycle guys who are delivering food parcels is far greater. So the competition, the intensity, and the potential to earn in some of those other sectors is a lot lower, right? And the incentives that workers get in those sectors, is less, right? And therefore, those segments are a lot harsher in that sense than work in the beauty sector. It could change, but so far, based on work we've done in this particular study and work we've done elsewhere with Preeti and other colleagues, we do realize that the higher the skill, the kind of things get to be a little easier, even for other segments like plumbers and carpenters and so on, who are very, very specialized skills relative to the guy who's just driving your cab or delivering your food parcel. So yes, so you have to take into cognizance the range of skills and the supply in the market of those skills. So beauty workers and so on are much less easily available. Again, you might have a lot of street corner salons, but as people turn to these platforms for convenience and for all the good reasons that Preeti mentioned, working on these platforms does tend to give you a little bit of an advantage for beauty workers.
And just to follow on this, Preeti, do you think we'll see the growth of new platforms or the emergence of new platforms in this sector, or will the big players remain in place?
Yes, so I think there have been attempts and variations in the way beauty services have been offered thus far. During our fieldwork, we also very interestingly found a company that was trying to operate only via WhatsApp. So I think there are, I don't know if if we can speculate, if we can have another urban company with the same kind of scale and reach that platform has managed to achieve. But it's interesting to think in terms of the different ways in which online platforms, whether they are an app, existing app like WhatsApp being repurposed to reach out to clients and connect clients to beauty workers, in what ways do these arrangements work and how do they work? So I think when we talk or when we speculate if how platforms will grow and if there will be newer platforms, I think it's also interesting to note how existing infrastructural arrangement themselves can be roped in to facilitate connecting customers with workers and delivering beauty services to them at home.
Thank you. And here's another question, going back to our conversation about working conditions. And the question is, how is the income of these workers compared to the minimum wage? Do you think they earn enough? Do they prefer to work as freelancers or as contract workers? I imagine that this means as employees of the company. Do you have any, who would like to go first, Balaji or Preeti? Who would like to answer this question?
Let me take a stab at it, which is that, I think most of the beauty workers are making close to a minimum wage, okay, at least in this segment of the platform economy. It's a little different from many other sectors where they're not necessarily getting that kind of an income. And the second part of your question, Olivia,
Yeah, I'll just read it out again. Do you think they earn enough? Do they prefer to work as freelancers? So we were talking about how they work as freelancers or independent contractors, or would they rather work as employees? And here maybe we can draw the comparison with the offline salon. And
I think the vast majority of workers in the offline salons are not formal employees either, in the sense that if by employees you're saying people whose incomes come with certain benefits. No, that's not how they work, right? So formal employment is really not much of an option for them. The other thing is, can you work as a freelancer? And I think if that was going to be as attractive, many of them would not have come to the app itself, because I think the app gives you some source of a regular income, something resembling a regular income. And then there are issues about security, professional identity that we had actually mentioned earlier. And in fact, one of the interesting aspects of our study was we did ask them if some of them could be tempted by customers to say, look, I'll work with you separately, so that your work with me, because the platform takes a commission. 30% to 35% commission on what is charged, and many customers were willing to work directly with the worker so that they could bypass this commission that was paid to the platform. And the vast majority of workers actually said no. For one, they were scared that if they were found out, they would be knocked off the platform. And that would lead to a certain precarity in their lives. And secondly, their point was like, if they do well, if the platform that does well, that is, and if they're going to get a steady source of income, why fall for this one-off temptation, right? And in fact, the other thing was, of course, what we also did notice was that many of them, of course, used the visits to customers to do other kinds of non-beauty related sales, certain products and so on. So that they would do. But actually undercutting or undermining the platform, we surprisingly saw very little of it.
If I can just ask you to clarify for the benefit of those in our audience who are not so familiar with the Indian context, Balaji, you were talking about the offline sector and how not all the people working in salons are necessarily formal employees or receiving benefits. Maybe you could just describe a little bit more what the situation is in an offline sector in terms of like if it's under 10 employees and that.
Essentially, you are there only as long as there is demand for services, right? Your work can be terminated at very short notice. And even when you're working in the salon, your work is not coming with any benefits, like, it might be health benefit or insurance benefits and so on. So many of these are small proprietary establishments run with just maybe half a dozen workers in them. And they could shut down tomorrow if there is a slump in the demand. And we did see that during the pandemic. Right? So when I say workers versus employees, I'm talking about employees are people who have a bunch of benefits that come along with their wage. For workers, it's wage, and that's it, full stop, nothing more.
That's great, thank you. One final question before we wrap up, and that's to do with the future. Did you ask the workers about their aspirations for the future? Did you include questions in your study about how workers perceive their future? So, Priti, maybe I can ask you to answer this one.
Yes, we did ask them this question because, in our team's own experience of visiting offline salons, we have observed that we rarely come across very senior women because of, like I mentioned, the very physically demanding nature of the job. So there is a natural phasing out as the beauty workers, who are mainly women, get older. So we were curious to know how long did they think they could continue with this work, and how were they really planning for the future. And they, of course, told us that they looked forward to working on the platform until their age permitted them to. We did have some workers who spoke about developing back pain, developing mobility issues. They told us how their knees were giving away and they could not really reach customers if there were no elevators installed in their buildings. And we found this pattern of the women telling us that they're trying to plan on becoming vendors or running businesses from homes to do with dress material, to do with fabric. So they aspired to, hustle and probably have their own ventures where they would, engage in direct customer contact and sell them clothes. We asked them if they wished to set up their own salons where they could become proprietors of their own beauty businesses. And we didn't find too many takers for that because the beauty business comes with very high and fixed overhead costs. Because whether you get customers or not, you still have to pay the electricity, you have to pay for air conditioning if you're operating in a hot city like Delhi. And therefore, becoming, beauty entrepreneurs was not on the agenda of any of the women we spoke to. So.
You mentioned the physical aspect of the work, and I remember being very interested to read in some of the interview answers how pedicure was a service that wasn't much liked by workers because of the heavy equipment that they have to carry.
Yes.
Whereas when you work in an offline salon, all the equipment is in one place and you don't have to carry it from one place to another. So that's definitely something to think about in terms of the differences and looking towards the future. And their prospect for the future. Yes. Okay, so thank you very much, Balaji and Priti, for joining us. And it's been great to have you here. And personally, it's been great to work with you over the last 18 months. So I'm very glad to be here virtually on the same stage today. And to the audience, I warmly encourage you to download the report where you'll be able to find out much more information than what we've been able to go into today. And I hand over to Christina for the closing of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivia. And thank you, of course, to this supreme panel. I think it was a great pleasure to be able to have the three authors, Balaji, Preeti, and Olivia, who've been working so hard in a specific period of time, particularly during the pandemics, and the results they came out with this report. It also shows how important it is to really further analyze the impact of this digitalization, this digital transformation, particularly on the female workforce, as the case of this study. As Olivia just highlighted, please download the report, read it carefully. We encourage you can find it in our website, and hopefully we can produce new reports in the coming future. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions, and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.